All right, so now the foundation course is your starter course. The foundation course is designed to get you ready to apply to whichever of our qualifying courses you want to apply for. It's a little bit of a complicated setup, although it won't feel like that once you're in it. But it's basically, if you do the full foundation course, it's a 1-year course. Now, there are 2 modules. There's a clinical module and there's a theoretical module. The theory module you can do as a standalone course. And when you do it as a standalone course, we call it Psychotherapy Today. So if you are interested in trying to see how you find psychoanalytic theory and Jungian theory, and you want a course where you're just going to be able to learn about some theory and see how you respond to it and so on, come and do Psychotherapy Today first, and then in the second year you could do the clinical module of the foundation course. So then that's when the foundation course becomes a 2-year course, if you want to do the theory first and the clinical module second. But I'm going to talk about the foundation course as if you're doing it all in 1 year, and as if you're doing it in order to get ready for one of our qualifying trainings. So, as I said, it's got a theory module. It's also got a clinical module. It's also got an experiential group, and you will also have a tutor who you will have at least 3 meetings with over the academic year. So 3 terms, 1 meeting a term. And that tutor is there specifically to talk to you about what kind of qualifying training you might be looking forward to doing. And then they will help you find your own personal way through to get yourself ready to apply for one of the qualifying trainings. And we will also be getting you ready to find your first clinical placement, which you will start hopefully sometime during the first term of the foundation course. And these early placements will be a sort of voluntary placement. They'll be probably in a charity setting or some other organization, but it will be face-to-face work, quite often listening work, befriending work, something like that, where you're not using psychotherapy skills yet because you're not trained in them, but you're getting the experience of sitting with people, quite often with some kind of disturbance or difficulty. And the point is that you can bring those experiences back to your clinical module discussion. I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then during the foundation course as well, we want you to start thinking about what kind of personal therapy you will be going into. Now, this is dependent on what kind of qualifying training you're going to end up doing. And so again, your tutor will help you understand what kind of personal therapy might be the best therapy for you to enter into. And the different therapists that I'm talking about, or training analysts I talk about, is that you might want to choose a Jungian analyst. If you think you're going to be doing one of our Jungian trainings, you might want a psychoanalytic or psychoanalysis. If you're going to go into one of our psychoanalytic trainings, you might want to think about whether you want to be in once-a-week therapy if you're going to be doing our psychodynamic training, or whether you want to go up to a 3 times a week analysis if you're going to be getting yourself ready to apply for one of our intensive trainings. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the theory part of it, which is the Psychotherapy Today course. So the theory part of it, the Psychotherapy Today part of it, it happens on a Saturday, and there are 10 Saturdays that happen across the academic year. And on each Saturday, you have 2 seminars. One seminar is looking at a particular topic from a psychoanalytic point of view, and the other seminar will be looking at the topic from a Jungian perspective. All of the readings in this theory course are intended to give you a broad oversight of some of the historical approaches in psychoanalysis and Jungian theory, but that we're also really hoping to bring it forward into some more contemporary discussions. So a lot of the readings are set with very contemporary ideas in mind and also world events in mind. These 2 seminars on the Saturday are then followed by a facilitated small group discussion. And this is really an important point where you will be guided with your peers that are with you in the theory group to really get hold of some of the ideas that you've been listening to in the day. It also helps you to start thinking about even just theory ideas from an analytic perspective. So really start critiquing them, seeing how these ideas make you feel, how you respond emotionally to some of these ways of thinking about human nature and human development and so on. Now, what Urvashi is really good at in running these small groups is that she really develops a feeling of safety, a feeling of exploration in these groups. And it's a chance for people to start building peer groups, really, and start getting to know people who you might end up training with as you go along. And all our seminar leaders and discussion facilitators are BPF psychoanalytic or Jungian analysts, or their child and adolescent psychotherapists. Now, it's important to say that we have 2 strands running through our foundation course. If you know right at the beginning that you're going to be trying to apply for our IPCAPA course, our child and adolescent training, you will be put into a child and adolescent stream so that your group discussion leaders and your clinical seminars will be led by child and adolescent psychotherapists. Okay. So what are the theoretical themes that are explored in these Saturdays? So we start off by really looking at the basics. What is a mind? And this is where you're going to get an insight, and not in depth at this point, but a starting of an idea about the historical and philosophical overviews from both Freud and Jung, and possibly even some other, Kleinian ideas and so on and so forth, some independent ideas as well. Moving on, then the following month, you'll come back and there will be papers developing some of the Jungian and psychoanalytic models of the mind. Then moving on to how do these get applied in practice? So this day 3 is really looking at what it is like to be a psychotherapist, especially because this is a broad church theoretical approach. You'll have both Jungian analysts and psychoanalytic psychotherapists working with you. So they'll be able to talk to you about the difference between, for example, a Jungian analyst or a psychoanalytic psychotherapist, and indeed a psychodynamic versus a psychoanalytic psychotherapist. So you'll be able to have a really good idea at this point about how these ideas and these models of the mind are really applied in practice. Day 4, they move on to trauma and neuroscience. And this is a really exciting area of psychoanalysis and modern psychoanalytic theory, really. And so already you're going to start getting an idea about how psychoanalytic ideas have moved and changed over time. Then there's a session looking at the connection between mind and body. And this is always an ongoing discussion in any psychological theory, really. Is there a difference between mind and body? How does our mind affect our body? How does our body affect our mind? What's the relationship? All sorts of different ideas have been posited, obviously, throughout the theory and literature. And again, it starts enabling you to really think about the difference in the way that you might want to work as a psychotherapist as you go through your career. So, there's a real wide range of ways of working with people. There are some people who very much work with the body. They think about drives, they think about motivations, they think about human beings as being an animal that's existing in an animal's world, if you like, and what the body has to say about how we relate to each other. And then, you know, there are other people who, or other ways of working that maybe are more on the spiritual end of things. So we'll really start thinking about how minds connect to other minds. And along your journey, you'll find where you sit in these in this spectrum, I think. And I mean, lots of people sit all over it. I guess you could say it's not an either or situation, but this is your chance again to listen to these different theories and really start trying to think about it for yourself, where you might want to end up training. Day 6 is elaborating on all of the ideas that you've heard so far, diving even deeper into the theory, into the history and the philosophy. And then day 7, there are readings on defenses. So this is really starting to get into the clinical end of work. And you'll be hearing all sorts of different ideas and theories about psychological defenses and why we have them, and what are very normal defenses, what are considered to be useful defenses, and how sometimes useful defenses can be useful at some part of your life and then become less useful later on in life as things change for you. And then also some of the defenses that people use it to relate to each other. Day 8, we start doing some group work, so group dynamics. This is just such a fascinating day, I think, because this is when you start understanding at a deeper level about unconscious processes. And so how unconscious processes can become group processes, and how groups of people will create a different group from a different group of people, if you see what I mean. How and in amongst this, we also bring out issues of racism, sexism, how we other people, how it's a sort of human nature quite often to pull ourselves into an in-group and see others as an out-group, and why we do that. Day 9 is when we finally get to sex and sexuality, which is one of psychoanalysts' favorite topics. We will talk about fetish and fantasy, and talk at length really about how psychoanalysis and how historically psychoanalysis has thought about fetishes and fantasies and sex and sexuality. This is a really, really fascinating subject, and it's a fascinating subject because it's fascinating to human beings in itself. But it's also fascinating because I think psychoanalysis has made some mistakes along the way, which in our psychotherapy today, we really get hold of and think about and talk about. But we also don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so what we really try and do is look at the theories that may not be helpful in modern contexts, but then try and understand what was being said and whether any of those theories are still useful or helpful in the consulting room today. And day 10 is a day to look at, I think, more complex presentations as they appear in the consulting room, and what that looks like and what that feels like. And one of the reasons that we bring this in to this very early course is because it's important, I think, to know what one will be working with when you have developed as a psychotherapist. And so what can be called narcissistic and borderline states of mind, I mean, those are sort of difficult labels in themselves, which we talk about. These kind of presentations in the consulting room can really affect us as we work as psychotherapists. And it's very important that people right at the beginning of their training understand that. And in a sense that you sign up for that, that you're interested in working in this way where you'll be pulled emotionally, where you will need to have a whole career really where you have to do quite a lot of emotional processing yourself on a daily basis, and that it affects us. Now, personally, I find that this is the the absolute meat of the work. It's the joy of the work. And it's why we have so much of our own personal therapy. It's why we are constantly in supervision for the whole of our career. And it's where great change can happen in oneself and one's patients as well. But it's really important that people starting out on their training have an idea of what it feels like to sit in the consulting room with disturbance. Okay, so that's the theory aspect of the foundation course. And that's the Psychotherapy Today course that you can do as a standalone course. So the clinical module happens at a different time. Now, the clinical module, for the clinical module, you're put into small groups of up to 7 people with 1 tutor. And the reason why we do this is because this is a chance for you to bring the work that you've got through your clinical placement to the clinical seminars. And it's a chance to role play clinical skills as well. So these small seminar groups, again, will be, there'll be a group of people that end up becoming quite important to you in your trainee journey. Clinical modules, so we put you into your small groups of 7 people. Each seminar meets fortnightly. So what that means is, I think it's, does it say 5 times a term? Yes, that's right. So it's 15 seminars across the year. And they meet for 1.5 hours. What we're saying is that once we've put you into your group and you have your seminar leader and the group is set up, that group can meet where you want to meet. So some groups meet online and some groups meet in person, and this will be up to the group to decide, and we'll help you make these arrangements. Some groups meet in Maplesbury Road, the BPF house. Some groups might meet in the clinical seminar leaders consulting room if that's appropriate. So this happens outside of the theory seminars. So in this clinical module, this is where you really learn the how to do it bits. And what we're hoping is that by the end of this year, of this clinical module year, you will be ready to take on your first clinical placement. And I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. So I'm just going to go through the curriculum for these clinical modules. So in term 1, we're really preparing you for clinical practice. So we look at things like the therapeutic frame, how you would set up your room, why it's important to set things up in a certain way. We talk about boundaries. We talk about building the therapeutic reliance. And we go into some sort of core, what you could call counselling skills, although I'm a little bit hesitant to say that because as psychoanalytic psychotherapists and Jungian analysts, we don't use counselling skills as such. But there's something about learning how to have a conversation with somebody in a slightly different way than you would in a normal social relationship. So we begin to bring that idea into the role plays. And what I mean by that, I guess, is that it's about the focus being on the patient, and it's about learning to listen in a certain way, and so that the conversation is about the patient and what the patient is bringing. In term 2, we move more onto human development and context. So we start thinking about you as a developing psychotherapist. So this is when we start thinking about something that I think I like to call emotional honesty with yourself. This is when we start really bringing in the idea that your only toolbox or let's say your best toolbox as a psychotherapist is yourself. It's your emotional self. It's your emotional responses to things. This is what gives you evidence of what is being told to you, either consciously or unconsciously, by your patients. We talk again about bringing in the resistance and defenses. So hopefully you will have done some of the theory already about that in the theory module. We talk about the ideas around memory and narrative, that actually, memory is a strange thing, and the narratives that people bring to you in psychotherapy matter. And it's not really about listening to the facts or the on the surface stories that someone's bringing you, but it's about listening in a different way. What are they trying to tell you? Why are they using this kind of narrative? Why are they bringing that memory and not a different one? So here we are starting to try and develop your analytic attitude in this term. And we'll also talk to you about breaks and separations, and this really is about you becoming an attachment object for your patient, and how breaks and separations in the therapy matter, and they matter hugely. And it's about attending to that and trying to understand how they matter to your patient, in what kind of way. And then in term 3, we are going much deeper into the analytic approach. So we really start using the professional terms, I suppose. So the transference and countertransference, which is sort of another way of saying therapeutic relationship. It's a bit more than that, though. We really talk about unconscious communication and how you might start thinking about that. Now, this is just such a brilliant point to get to in your training, because it's when you really can start letting your mind take that third eye, that analytic attitude, where you can start guessing and not knowing. Unconscious communication is unconscious. We can't ever actually know what is being unconsciously communicated. So this is when we have to start really reflecting and thinking and wondering about things, not knowing, holding on to our desire to fix, to reply maybe in the moment, and wait and see what we think is being really communicated. And quite often, of course, because it's unconscious, the patient doesn't know necessarily what it is that they're trying to tell you. And so there's something about you and the patient working together to try and work it out. We have a session on ethics and responsibility. So here we'll be talking about safeguarding, risk taking, what one might do in certain situations, what you might do if your patient discloses self-harm, for example, or if they leave the session in an emotional state that makes you worry about them, and so on and so forth. And then the final session in this series is about endings, and again, a bit like breaks and separations, endings again is so important. How we handle an ending, the different types of endings that you might occur in your work with your patients, planned endings, unplanned endings, so on and so forth. Okay. So what's the outcome of this foundation course? Well, this is what we hope. We hope that this foundation course will mean that you will have an idea of what qualifying trainings you want to do after you finish the foundation course. Now, some people finish the foundation course and they decide they don't want to train. That's absolutely fine. They go away back into their jobs, say they might be a social worker or a teacher or something, and they've got an added idea about human relationships, and it enriches the work that they're currently doing. But I'm guessing that quite a lot of the people that do our foundation course will be trying to think about what kind of psychotherapy training they want to do. We hope that you will know how to apply to that training, and your tutor will have talked to you at depth about that. We will be getting the directors of the qualifying trainings to come into the foundation course meetings and talk to you about what it is that you might need to do if you're not ready to apply, or how to get yourself ready to apply. You will have had conversations with your tutor and the selection tutors of the qualifying training about the application process. And by the end, you should be in the correct kind of therapy. So as I said before, do you need to be in once weekly therapy or 3 times a week therapy with a Jungian analyst or a psychodynamic psychotherapist, psychoanalytic psychotherapist? Okay. I just want to say, I think I might have missed the slide somewhere. I want to say a little bit about the placement as well. So in this year, hopefully in the first term, we'll be talking to you about getting your first placement. As I say, it will be a sort of voluntary listening type placement. Now, we have a placement tutor who you may have heard about people talking about already. And she's called Danielle, and Danielle will help you find an appropriate placement. There's no huge strict rules about where your placement should be or how much time you spend in that placement. This is up to you to decide. And with your tutor and also with Danielle, you'll have conversations about what placements are appropriate, what might be best for you. So, for example, if you're going to be applying to IPCAPA, you will need a child and adolescent placement. If you're going to be applying to our intensive trainings, you might need a placement that maybe has a little bit more counselling type work in it, and so on and so forth. So we will help you to think about your placements, but you want to be able to be bringing enough experience from that placement so that when you bring that placement experience to your clinical seminars, you can really get hold of the ideas that we're teaching you about in those clinical seminars, and you can apply it as you go back to your placement in a probably a weekly visit. So you'll be in that placement until the end of the foundation year, and then depending on which training you apply for, you will then move on to a different kind of placement, which will be more like a psychotherapy placement, probably an NHS placement. And then I think the final thing I want to say is that this foundation course, from here, if you want to apply to our psychodynamic training, you will go straight on to year 2. So this foundation course is the equivalent of year 1 of our psychodynamic training. So from here, you'll apply straight to go into year 2 of the psychodynamic training. And then, so that means you've got 3 years left of the psychodynamic training before you qualify. Okay, I think I'm going to go to questions now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and have a look at the questions. Okay. Okay, so really good question about the therapy. So we try not to be too prescriptive about exactly how long you need to be in therapy before you apply for your qualifying training. The more, the better, I would say. And if you're going to apply for an intensive training, they do want you usually to have been in therapy for 6 to 8 months, somewhere around that level. If you're applying for the psychodynamic training, we do want you to be in therapy, a good 6 months. But if it's difficult for you to find that, to find a therapist, again, we will talk to you on a day-to-day, a person-to-person basis about that. Okay. So yes, can you confirm the foundation course first year? Yes, it is. It's the first year of the psychodynamic psychotherapy training. We have had a bit of a confusion about starting our new psychodynamic training, and we have a group of foundation course people in the foundation course at the moment, but we took on a cohort of people who were sort of extra to that. So they are currently doing a year 1. From next year onwards, we will be running a foundation course, and we might run a version of the foundation course on the Monday morning. It will be the same course. It will just be happening at a different time. And so for some people, it might be that they can attend on a Monday morning rather than on the Saturdays. But we will make this much clearer on our website very soon, next week. Okay. Can you explain the difference between Psychotherapy Today and the other foundation course? Okay, so I hope I've made that clear. Psychotherapy Today is the theory module of the foundation course. Is it always clear if one prefers Jungian to Freudian perspective in the foundation year? Yes, I would say probably yes. Now, our psychodynamic training is across Jungian and Freudian ideas. So if you go from our foundation course into our psychodynamic training, you don't really have to pick. You come out as a psychodynamic psychotherapist, and we have Jungian and Freudian and Kleinian and independent Winnicottian ideas throughout the course. The time you have to pick is if you want to do one of our intensive trainings, or if you want to do the psychodynamic Jungian once a week training. And I think if you know that you want to do one of our intensive courses or the Jungian courses, you'll have a fairly good idea that you prefer thinking in one way to another. So is there a way to do the foundation course quicker? So it's full-time, there's not a full-time version of it, but there's a 1-year version. You can't do it any quicker than 1 year. Can I go into the Jungian psychotherapy training after this? And if so, how long is the Jungian psychotherapy training? Okay, so this is interesting. The Jungian psychotherapy training is 4 years. So if you did the foundation course and then went on to the Jungian psychotherapy training, you are looking at a 5-year training. However, you don't have to do the foundation course to go on to the Jungian psychotherapy training. This is a bit of an anomaly. You can go straight and do the 4-year Jungian psychodynamic training without the foundation course. It might be that you want to do the foundation course to find out whether you want to do that Jungian training, though. Someone saying, can you explain intensive trainings? Yes, sorry, the intensive trainings are 3 times a week training. So our psychodynamic is what we call a once a week. So you're in once a week psychotherapy, and we train you to see patients once a week. Our intensive trainings are 3 times a week. So you are in 3 times a week analysis, and you are trained to see patients 3 times a week. Now, one thing that people do quite often is that they might do our psychodynamic training, qualify, go out into the workplace, and then they decide they want to increase their intensity in their training. So they come back into one of our intensive trainings because they want to increase to 3 times a week. And they can start halfway through the intensive courses then. It's called the modified entry scheme. I'm sure some of you might have heard other people talk about it earlier today. Okay. So I'm interested in the psychodynamic training pathway. I understood from that session that psychodynamic year 1 is the same as the foundation course here. Yes, it is. Yes, exactly. So I think this has all been a little bit difficult to arrange at the moment, and we will see who applies. But I think next year we'll have a foundation course running on the Saturdays and another one running on the Mondays for those people that know they definitely want to go into the psychodynamic training. Can I go on to the Jungian psychotherapy training after? Oh yeah, I think I've answered that one already. Okay. If I join this foundation course in order to move to the psychodynamic, I would not need to attend on Mondays during the first year. Yes, that's correct. You could do the Saturday foundation course, apply for the PD training, And the second year, which you would be going into, that's when you would need to attend on a Monday afternoon. Can you go into the couple psychodynamic psychotherapy from the psychodynamic psychotherapy training at BPS? Yes, you can. You absolutely can. And that's, again, we would help you get ready for that application to go on to our couples course. How many people can you take onto the foundation course? We can take about 60, but it depends on the time and depends who's applying and so on, but it's quite a big cohort. Okay. So would the SAP foundation course also count as a first year equivalent to go on to year 2 psychodynamic? Yes, I think it probably would. We would want to talk to you about it because I would want Sheila to have a look at that. We do say our foundation course or another foundation course that we approve, but it's worth having a conversation with us. The reason why is because some foundation courses don't have the clinical element that we have. Lots of foundation courses are theory only, and that wouldn't be enough for us. We'd want you to do the clinical part of our foundation course. So it might be that some people have done a theory foundation course somewhere else, and then we might want them to do the clinical aspect alone of our foundation course. And the reason for that is that when you go into year 2 of the psychodynamic training, we're putting you straight into a psychotherapy NHS placement. So you need to have a good grounding in clinical skills as well as the theory. What do you expect from potential applicants? For the foundation course, to be honest with you, not much. We want to get you ready during the foundation course to apply for a clinical training. So we basically want to see a certain amount of personal maturity. We want to see that you're interested in thinking analytically and working analytically. We do, if you're thinking about where you're going to train next, most of our professional trainings need or are looking for people who have got a degree in their past, but the degree can be in anything. If you haven't, though, we are still very interested in talking to you because there are plenty of people who didn't get degree level qualification and are the best psychotherapists. So I think what I'm trying to say is we take a look at a very wide range of applicants for the foundation course. I think the more difficult application is getting onto the qualifying trainings. And what we try and do is take people onto the foundation course so that you have a chance to get yourself ready to do to apply for the qualifying trainings. Okay, I'm currently on an integrative psychotherapy foundation course. However, I wish to move on to the psychodynamic training from September 24, so that's next year. I am attending lectures at the Institute of Psychoanalysis, I guess that is, as well as getting into personal therapy with a psychoanalytic psychotherapist. Excellent. And voluntary work over the next 10 months. Would I still need to do the foundation course? Okay. Now this is really interesting. And I think your best option here is to email us and talk to Sheila. I think when you've got your kind of experience, I think Sheila would be really interested in just seeing whether she thinks you've got enough psychoanalytic theory to come on to year 2 of the psychodynamic pathway. So send us an email, have a conversation with Sheila, and we'll hopefully get you set up. Okay. So are there other foundation courses out there that you would accept as sufficient to enter year 2 of psychodynamic training? So yeah, as I said before, it depends on the level of skills teaching that they've done on their foundation course. I now work in mental health with the NHS. not qualified practitioner. My experiences at my workplace could be recognised for my clinical experience. They could, and they could be the perfect clinical placement material for you to bring to the clinical seminars. However, that in itself isn't enough. We would want you to also attend our clinical seminars and our clinical skills teaching, because that's when we really start getting you to develop as an analytic practitioner. Is it possible to have a break after the foundation course before proceeding to the second year of the 4-year psychodynamic training? Yes, absolutely, of course. Lots of people do that. Lots of people need to pause to raise funds. Lots of people do theory first, clinical in the second year, take a break, come back and apply for a training. I would say keep in touch with us, and we'll, you can. It is a bit of a bespoke pathway, I would say, to training. It's a complicated and expensive old business, and we're aware of that. Do you accept people straight onto the first year of psychodynamic training if they've done okay, I think I've answered that probably. As I understand, there's no deadline for applications. It's a first come, first served process. Can you tell us more about your process? Okay, at the moment, traditionally, we have done it a little bit like this. And that is how it is at the moment. So I think Matthew's probably going to answer about how you make the application. I would say go to our website, look at the application process on our website. But yes, I would say if you know you want to do it, apply and get onto the course, because we do have waiting lists for these courses. Okay. Someone's saying the SAP course doesn't have the clinical module. That's interesting. Yeah, I think there's lots of questions about foundation courses, and I think a lot of these probably you just need to email us and have a conversation with Urvashi, with Sheila, and they can tell you what they think you will need to get you ready. Okay.
We've got a couple more minutes, Frances, so enough time for one more question.
Okay, all right. I think we're sort of getting to the ends of the questions. That there are quite a lot of questions from international students. Matthew, I'm going to let you answer that because I think you know better than that. So I think Matthew will put answers, hopefully. If not, and I'm sure Matthew and Danny have said this to you all before, please do email us with your questions if we haven't got to your questions, or if I haven't been able to answer them properly, and we'll try and get back to you. Yeah, and there's lots of people asking about going straight into year 2 of the psychodynamic training. Again, I think it's going to have to be on a case-by-case basis to see whether we think you'll be ready to go straight into that NHS placement. That's our priority. With all of our trainings, the patient is at the center of everything. And so what we always say is what we're really looking for is, are you ready to sit in that context with that patient? And if not, we'll get you ready, but you might have to do a little bit more work, whether it's more therapy yourself or whether it's more clinical skills work. There might be things that we ask you to do to get yourself ready.